Hi, and welcome to Chapter 2 of the Readiness Method. I'm recording here in Istanbul, so please excuse any street noise. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 major steps which the Readiness Method has. So we're going to be diving into something practical today. We're talking about the Readiness Method, but not in a heavy step-by-step sort of way. Think of it like this. You have inherited an inner garden, and you've inherited it from your past. Now, some of the plants are thriving, but some of the plants are weeds, and some of them, frankly, don't belong in your garden anymore. And you're in a position to notice, to tend, to shape that garden. And you can start doing it right now with no rule book required. So step 1 is to see your garden. What's growing in there? What habits, thoughts, emotional reactions, and assumptions are running your life without you even noticing it? You don't need to judge. You don't need to fix anything. Just noticing. For example, when you always tense up when a colleague gives you feedback, or when certain conversations feel uncomfortable, that's your garden showing itself. Now, just noticing is a huge step. It's like stepping back and seeing the weeds and the flowers before you start to touch anything. I will add here that the most important thing to make observation possible is calmness. So, in many ways, there's no need to apply anything we're talking about right now until we get to that skill of calmness. So just keep that in mind. So here's a thought for you. Think of your interactions today and what usually triggers you. Perhaps you can remember some of what happens in your body. The chest tightens, the shoulders tense, maybe your mind starts to spin. That's your garden, and you're looking at it. So let's move on to step 2. We can, throughout this process, learn how to tend the garden. And readiness is the acronym that we use. Now we start tending, but very gently. And this is where the readiness process comes in. You do it at your own pace. The other thing about it is because it's an acronym, you can remember it and it's portable. You can use it anywhere, anytime. There's no need for an app. There's no need for a guide. There's no need to refer to your textbook. So readiness is basically 3 things. The ability to recognize patterns that are causing you unnecessary stress. You don't just see what the plant is, you notice the effect that it has on you. And then later we move on to understanding, which only happens when we're calm enough and even-minded enough. We can begin to understand, why is this pattern here? What is it that keeps the pattern alive? You can start to look at it and say, maybe it helped me once, but perhaps now it's a leftover from your upbringing or something that you learnt in the past. Maybe it's a habit that once felt protective, but now no longer serves you. We learn in readiness how to stop feeding it, or how to prune or trim it carefully. We don't need to fight it. We don't need to be disciplined. We don't need to eliminate it overnight. We just gradually help it to lose strength by no longer watering it and no longer feeding it attention, or to go back to the garden analogy, giving it fertilizer or water or sunlight. When you change your focus of where you're putting your attention, then you will find that those plants are no longer nourished. For example, you may find that every time you feel anxious, you automatically check your phone. If you can recognize that impulse, understand it, you'll be able to see that your brain is trying to escape discomfort, is trying to suppress it. So then, instead of feeding it, we can pause. We can sit with the feeling as it is and introduce calm. Even just sitting with that feeling for a moment and just being with it without following it or suppressing it can help that pattern lose its grip. And as you get more skillful, you find that you can do it in different locations. You might start off doing it at home where it feels safe and comfortable, but you might do it on the train, and you might even be able to find quiet moments at work or in everyday life. Step 3 is becoming what I call a skillful gardener. This is where the magic shows up. Once we've learned the readiness method and we're able to introduce calm, self-observation, and see patterns and begin to weaken them, we can start to move out those old weeds and start to ask ourselves how we want our garden actually to look. When you've started noticing and tending your garden, you start to become a skillful gardener. And what does that mean? Well, life keeps on throwing us challenges. The skillful gardener doesn't fight or try to control everything. Instead, they do three things. They tend daily, which is just to say using the readiness process to manage small reactive episodes, and have consistent attention, which is calm and non-reactive. For example, noticing tension, noticing impulses, and making small adjustments gently. The second thing is aligning periodically. Stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, seeing if your life is reflecting your values and your priorities. Are you spending your money in the way which is going to make you more stable, or are you destabilizing yourself by how you spend your money? Are your relationships beneficial to you, beneficial to others, or not? Where are you putting your energy, and is that where you want your energy to go? The third part is deep cultivation, where we make slower and more intentional engagements with the big subjects of life. What do we feel gives our life meaning? What is our relationship to spirituality, to God, or to religion? How do relationships look for us? How do we manage uncertainty? Because as we will discover, life is certainly uncertain. So none of this is a to-do list. It's insight that naturally expresses itself through your experience over time as you gain more insight into your inner garden. And the goal of the readiness method is not perfection, it's not to control. It's to be able to have steady, attentive care for your inner garden. Over time, that garden, your mind, your patterns, your choices become clearer, lighter, and easier to manage. So as we end this chapter, I'll just give you a little note to think about, because sometimes it's tempting to go out and make big changes. Calm is the most important thing. Before we can proceed into anything else, to be able to self-observe, we need to be able to have calm. And we need to make calm into something that we enjoy, not something that feels like a chore or that feels like a tension. So for now, just consider calmness. What brings calmness into your life? How can you cultivate more of it? Calmness leads to space that makes it easier for you to have insight, for you to make personal choices, and to be able to let things go. It also opens the door so that you can start to notice without fighting. It also means that you don't have to be wrapping your head around philosophy or finding the right guru. So if you take one thing from today, from this talk, just remember calmness is the first step. And then from there, we can step back and we can start to see the garden. And when we do start to work with the garden, we tend it gently. We recognize with calmness, we understand, and only when we feel comfortable, we start to trim and make small changes. So layer calm over your self-observation, and gradually you will become a skilled gardener. And this is something you can start doing right now, in any moment, in anything that you're doing, whether it's a conversation, a task, or even scrolling on your phone. And the beauty is that you already have everything that you need. You're just remembering to pause, to notice, to breathe, and act with awareness. And that's the foundation of the readiness process. And it's yours to practice freely right now. I hope that you've enjoyed this chapter, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next one. Have a great day.